Oh, hang on, let me just press this. Oh, I thought I would have cracked this now, but I'm on take 432, which is pretty symptomatic of me when I try and do things on my own. I need someone to keep me in the lines, because I colour out of the lines all the time. Anyway, hello, welcome back to Being Human, the podcast that is simply trying to make a difference in this life. I'm normally joined in the Sunshine Shed by my friend Molly, but she's not here today, just because I said I'd do one on my own. I don't really know why. I felt drawn to do a New Year's podcast because I find New Year's Eve weirdly discombobulating, and so I thought I'd share the Beanology way in dealing with that. It is the 31st of December 2024, and tonight we welcome a new page, a new year, a new chapter in the book, and it's a funny one because the turning of the year can create such ginormous feelings. It's like somebody has everything we feel looking through it with a microscope, so everything feels bigger. The loneliness, the sadness, the joy, the love, the gratitude, and I for one sit in a space where I feel all of those emotions on New Year's Eve. I feel lonely and connected, I feel loved and despaired, I feel sad, I grieve for the people I've lost in the years gone by, I grieve for time that has passed. I feel sad for the passing of time, even though I am grateful that tomorrow I will get to wake up again in a new year, in a new day, in the same bed. Not drinking anymore means I very rarely wake up in a different bed. Not that that's happened for a long time. I've been married for a very, very long time. Anyway, so here I am. My name is Lizzie Bean. If I said this already, you see, if Molly was here, she'd be able to say to me, Lizzie, you've said that already. My name is Lizzie Bean. I have a business called Beanology, and I travel around the world and I teach people about what that means, and really in essence what it means. And it's more complicated than this because we are complicated beings and we're nuanced and we're juxtaposed, is that a word? But I teach people how to come home to this idea that we are enough. And I feel like New Year's Eve, you know, the minute tomorrow comes, we will be utterly bombarded with adverts about how to be better versions of ourselves. And for years I signed up to the programs and the diets and the fitness regimes and the 30 days of happy photos and the I'm going to run backwards for 7 miles every day for January, and none of those things stuck, none of them fixed me, none of them nurtured the spaces in my heart that were hurt, and that's why I'm a little bit anti New Year's resolutions, but actually that's my story. Really, if they help you, then go for it, go do them, make the resolutions, make a promise to yourself. But if you're like me and you find them overwhelming and actually they make me stop doing things, then maybe this podcast is for you. I think my invitation on New Year's Eve is the same as my invitation to humankind every day, which is this idea that maybe, just maybe, we could travel our lives and the roads in which we find ourselves with a much more compassionate pair of shoes, so that we are kinder to our reflections, we're kinder to our mistakes, we're kinder to our vulnerabilities, we're kinder to the way that sometimes our feelings overwhelm us and knock us to the ground. I think that as humans we are predisposed and very brilliant at being judgmental and critical of ourselves, and that doesn't help us to grow into the shoes that we're wearing. It just makes us subscribe to this idea that there is a better version for us. And my question for us all is, oh hang on, gosh, she's gonna cry already, is, are we not already there? When my babies were born, they'd already arrived at being the best version of who they were in that space. And as I watched them grow and step into the world, older and more maturer than me, I still believe that they are utterly brilliant and absolutely made of stardust. And the way the Beanology world is this space that tries to help people to come home to this idea that no matter what the messages they received as a kid, no matter what the experiences that they've had, and I understand that there are some experiences that are so extreme, but you are not that experience, and that you are allowed to feel good about who you are. The world can be hurtful and hateful, and people can be critical and judgmental, and people can say, well, you should have done better, and you should be thinner, and you should be more achieving more, and why haven't you got a 5-year plan? Fucking hell. I know all that stuff, you know, plans helps, but what about inviting you to look at yourself in the mirror and saying, I'm going to try loving you? And if that could be the New Year's resolution that we all have, that would be a beautiful thing. And the reason why that is so brilliant and beautiful and magical and great is because the more I've grown to love myself, not in a conceited, arrogant, wanky way, but in a this is all I have way, the kinder and more compassionate I am to other people. And that doesn't mean that I let people step over me, and that doesn't mean that I let people push against my boundaries. That doesn't mean I'm a people-pleasing, put myself last person. But it does mean that I'm kind to, compassionate to people first, because generally people's behaviours are symptomatic of a story that is going on underneath. And that is a great invitation for me to step onto my next trajectory, which is the idea that we all have a story. And 2024 for me has been, I can't remember if I've said this already, so excuse me if I'm repeating myself. I've done so many takes of this podcast. Is like a confetti gun, and emotions come at me all the time, like you know, like if you imagined emotions were colours, and you've got a confetti gun and it's blowing out, you know, reams and reams and reams of coloured paper, and each of those colours is a different emotion. That's how I travel life. That's how emotionally invested I am in being alive. And if you're somebody that follows me on social media, thank you for a start, but you'll see that there are days when sometimes I'm like, in the morning I'm like on fire, I go for a run, I snog Trevor Tree because he loves it, and I'm like jumping in puddles and rescuing snails. If I'm feeling really charitable, I pick up the odd slug, and then 2 hours later I'm saying I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think 2024 has been symptomatic of a lot for me, in that I am a lady of a certain age. I'm 47. I'm perimenopausal. I've given up drinking alcohol, and I think all of those things together, and I'm a deeply, deeply, deeply sensitive person. I feel like I'm, you know, when you get pins and needles in your leg, and you know you get the numb bit in your leg, and then you get to that point, you know, when you put your foot down, it sort of makes you go, huh, that one, huh. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I'm that. Like I'm that. That's how I feel in this life. And I am trying to be, I'm not trying, I'm really good at looking after those emotional feelings, because I've educated myself into how to do that and how to look after myself. But that doesn't mean I don't feel them. It just means I know how to look after them. I think there's been a lot at play this year. 2024 has been a year where, because I've given up drinking alcohol, I have had to turn and face some pretty deep and dark shadows that have been dancing behind me. If I think about it, I've been drinking alcohol since I was 15 probably. I can't remember my first alcoholic drink, but I was probably 14, maybe 14, and I remember sneaking downstairs into my mum and dad's kitchen and drinking half a glass of whiskey because I couldn't sleep. And alcohol was definitely that kind of crux for me about being able to sleep and being able to turn off that horrible feeling in my tummy. I used alcohol as a crutch to get through a lot. I've danced with a lot of really tricky things in my life, much like every other human. But rather than knowing how to deal with that with just my sensitive humanness, I drank wine. And I think, and obviously I don't know because I'm not you and you're not me, but like that feeling of anxiety that I get is so big sometimes that it literally stops me being able to breathe. And alcohol just turns it off. But when I gave up alcohol on the 2nd November 2023, I knew that it was the best thing to do, but I can honestly say that it has been one of the trickiest, and not because I wanted to drink, but because I didn't want to feel the feelings that I have felt this year. And it's been hard. So I've lost a lot of weight. I think I've lost 4.5 stone this year, and everyone has said to me, wow, you look amazing, you're on fire, you're creating all of this content and it's beautiful, and it is, and I'm really proud of myself. But it is a response to trying to help the overwhelming feelings of anxiety and shame. The weight loss thing, which Molly and I talk about a lot, has been a really fascinating thing, because I haven't meant to lose weight. At one point in April or May of last year, my anxiety was so bad that I was struggling to eat, and what had happened was my shame response had been triggered, and I had to turn and make peace with that part of myself. But in doing that, I had to cope with this overwhelming sense of anxiety, which stopped me eating, and not because I didn't want to eat, but because I felt so anxious I couldn't eat. And then that, which is so fascinating, isn't it? And then that triggered an old coping mechanism from my teenage years, where I didn't eat very much because that was a great way to help yourself feel better. I'm being ironic. So there's a control thing going on there, and I've had to work really hard to stop that and to look after myself. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Because all of these things, the not eating thing, you know, came back to thinking that I wasn't lovely enough as I am, that being fat is a bad thing. This response, the physical response in my body, is a response to the messages that I received as a young person, that I'd be much nicer and much more valuable to society and to the shape of my family if I wasn't as big as I was. Oh, so 2024, fuck me, I've danced with my 17-year-old self, and I've been reminded how fucking lovely she was. And how today, as we turn into 2025, instead of shaming her and making her feel small for the choices that she made, I'm taking her hand and I'm taking her with me, because she's utterly lovable and utterly adorable, and she's all she ever needed to be. So that's fascinating, and also massively discombobulating, but I can't be alone. I can't be alone in all of these dances. I know, obviously I work in mental health. I have clients that come to see me and we talk about all the stuff that hurts and all the stuff that's tricky. There's a lot of self-doubt that turns up at the door of my Sunshine Shed. There's a lot of self-loathing. There's a lot of people not even realising that they're allowed to love themselves, that that's even a thing. I've got friends who dance in and out of these spaces all the time, and they look to me and just say, I don't know what I've done to feel so awful. And I think the thing is, it's not what we've done, it's what we didn't get. It's not it's not mending the broken. but nurturing the spaces that didn't get nourished when we were younger, because of the messages that we received from all parts of our lives, whether that be in our family units or the schools we attended or the toxic culture with which we find ourselves. I also think the perimenopausal thing, you know, like this age thing about hormones and whatnot. I know, like, there's all sorts of science that backs up this you know, changing in your hormones, and it's definitely happening to me. I've got you can only see this if you watch the video. I've got these arm things going on, and my neck is getting wrinkly, and I'm definitely more wrinkly, and I'm greyer, and I'm tireder. And so I understand that there's a science at play, and it's changing me from the inside and stuff that I cannot see. But I also really want to use this as an opportunity for all other people who are my age or in around this midlife hiatus, whatever it is, and just say, look, science, there is a part of science that is at play, but let us not forget that the sands beneath our feet are shifting, and as our children get older and spread their wings and step out into the big wide world, and we hope that we've done a good enough job to keep them safe, there's a sadness there, there's a grief. I always knew every Christmas that, you know, there would be no Christmas the same again, and this Christmas particularly so has been utterly glorious and blessed with such privilege and love, but it's changing, and that's okay because it's supposed to, but there is a sense of loss and a sense of grief, and I don't think that we talk about that enough either. We talk a lot about the science and our hormones, but we don't talk enough about the changing shape of the people around us, the changing dynamic within our households, the letting go of, and I don't mean letting go in that way, but I mean like the releasing of our children into the world, knowing that we cannot fix their troubles anymore. When they're little, I went carol singing on Christmas Eve. It was lovely, thank you, Kate. And I was talking to one of the other ladies that was there, and I said, you know, the love for my children has not waned, it hasn't changed, it's the same, it's as powerful now as it has always been, but I know that love needs to let them go, and that's fine, and I'm all for that. I'm looking forward to buying a bus and travelling around the world in a bus. I don't know if that will ever happen, but I'd quite like that. If anyone wants to sponsor that, that would be cool. I could just go around in a bus and then have like a pull-out stage and a sound system, that's so I could sing songs, and the bus would be spotty, and have like a little hot tub, cold tub on the back, and then when I booped the horn it would go. Anyway, I digress. What was I saying? Oh, had a conversation with a lady, and we were talking about parenting and being mum, and I said, you know, when your children are small, your arms ache, you're tired, it's relentless, you are always fixing something or picking people up, and what a joy that is, the snuggles, the time sat on the sofa lost in Peppa Pig. So your arms ache, but when your children get bigger, it's your heart that hurts the most, as they step away. And that's great, like, I'm not saying I don't want my children to step away, but let's acknowledge the grief, and the muckfuckery at play in the fact that we cannot fix things anymore with a packet of mini cheddars and a box of sun-made raisins, because that used to be like the ultimate answer. So yes, 2024, I welcomed the perimenopause. I lost 4.5 stone. I danced in the shadow of shame. I wrote a book, and I've written a play nearly that will be going live in March. I started a podcast. I ran 1,000,000 miles, and even that makes me laugh because my running is amazing now. Like I can run 7 miles without really thinking about it, which is a place I've never really been. But it's a response to overwhelm, emotional overwhelm. And as I look back now at that time, you know, I've been in a space similar to this before. And the last time I hit a junction like this, I ran away from home. I got very drunk every night. I got medicine to help my mental health, and I did what I could with what I knew to help myself not feel like I didn't want to be on this earth anymore. And this time it's been a really, really different experience. So although I felt like I was staring down a dark tunnel, and that feeling of anxiety is so overwhelming, this time I've actually healed the hurts and I've done the work, which has led me to being here. I'm not so ashamed and I'm not so anxious, and I actually feel quite chipper, and that's a space to find myself. It's quite cool. So yes, new year. If you don't want to make big promises, step into 2025 in a gentle way. Step into it with this idea that, you know what, I'm just going to be kinder to myself. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm going to recognise that I'm not the perfect person, because perfection is a made up thing. You're not the perfect mum or the perfect wife or the perfect dad or the perfect friend, but you are. There's no measure for that. And recognising that living a true and intentional life and choosing kindness over criticism and space over smothering and truth with great integrity, you know, that's a beautiful thing. And we shouldn't sneeze at that, because those are the sorts of resolutions that will actually change your life, not just what size jeans you might wear or whether or not next year you can afford the car that proves your worth in the village in which you live. Oh, the cynic in me. I'd also like to point out that I know we're turning the calendar day today, but also it is just another day. Like, and when I talk about New Year's resolutions, I want to talk about new life revolutions. Well, that was good, it came quite quick. Like, let's make a promise to ourselves every morning to wake up and be kinder to ourselves. Because the kinder we are to ourselves, the easier it is to be kinder to others. Because everyone has a story. And that doesn't mean that we're responsible for everybody else, that's not what I'm saying. But it means that we don't have to carry the weight of everybody else's story, but just understand that everyone has a story. That helps us to feel A, less alone, and B, more compassionate. Because quite frankly, this life could do with a lot more light. You know, there's a lot of shit going on in the world, and I think for me personally, as someone who is in a space of great privilege, I think it's really important for me to shine a light. And when I talk about shining a light, oh, I love how I get distracted by myself. When I talk about shining a light, like, some people I think get totally misconstrued into the idea that I'm always happy all the time, and that is not what I'm on about. When I talk about shining a light, it's about living true. Like, I think I am a happier, more healed version of myself than this time last year, well, this time 6 months ago, because I am telling my story. Not because I'm not feeling sad, and not because I'm not processing shame, not because I don't feel anxious or sorry or bad, but because I feel better because I am saying that stuff out loud, and I'm allowing my body to feel the feelings rather than push them away with wine or I don't know, whatever else I used to do. I'm holding those feelings safe and with great love, and I'm taking care of the parts of me, the younger parts of me who were there to experience those firsthand. So what I'm inviting you to do for the new year and for every new day is to, when you wake up in the morning, is to, rather than say, I'm going to be the best version of myself, you wake up and you say, I am. I am because I am. And that's a beautiful thing for me to be. And then allowing that feeling about yourself to grow so that you can start stepping into the colours that you were born to paint in. You know, the book that I've published this year, I know isn't perfect, but I would never have done that a year ago. And that's because I've realised that I do still have a part of me that's all about being perfect, but there's nothing I can do about that because I'm not perfect. And so I put this book into the world just thinking, it's just words. And some people will love it and some people will hate it, and that's okay, because we're human and we're allowed to have those choices. I've got a bit of a cold. It's really nice. So yes, I think it's really important as well for me to recognise that there is an awful lot of terrible things going on in the world, and we can't do a great deal about those terrible things. And for me personally, my dance with that stuff is that I don't want to close my eyes to it, but I have to acknowledge that all I can do is, I can do very little apart from to try and not let the world shut their eyes to all the awful that's going on. And I'm not just talking about the wars that are in the world and the injustices that are in the world, but I'm talking about the people that are abused, the children that are abused, the women that are abused, the men that are abused. I'm talking about the people whose lives are really difficult. I'm not going to not talk about those things. And I know that's a funny dichotomy because, you know, sometimes I say to people if they're overwhelmed to like get off the news and stop looking at the news because it's too overwhelming. So I stand by that, but also I'm not going to stop trying to make sure people don't forget that we're not all as privileged as each other. And part of the reason why compassion is such a key part of my life is it's not difficult to be kind to people. Christmas was a classic. I terrified a security guard in Boots in Cheltenham. Well, I don't know if I terrified him. Basically, I set off the alarms because I'd been shoplifting. I hadn't actually been shoplifting, but I hadn't got my labels taken off my ding dong. And so the young man, chased me out of the store. He didn't chase me, but I like to make it a bit dramatic, and pulled me back in by my braces and emptied my bag and was taking the labels off. And I was just saying to him, thank you, oh gosh, for getting rid of this, that would be a nightmare. And he was just being really kind and thoughtful, and he wasn't grumpy or angry, or, you know, he was wearing a security thing, but he wasn't officious or scary. And after we'd finished rifling around in my sack, not a euphemism, he just looked at me and said thank you. And I was like, oh God, what for? And he was like, just for being nice. So he spent his entire day working as a security guard, and people would be unkind to him and grumpy with him for him doing his job. And I don't think it's difficult to be nice to people. I then utterly terrified him because I gave him one of my magic beans out of my pocket. And I think he thought, good God, this woman's actually lost the plot. I mean, he wouldn't be wrong. God knows what he's done with it. Anyway, I don't think it's difficult for us to be nice. People talk about niceness being boring and nice girls aren't interesting. I think it's nice to be nice, and I think nice makes life a better place. I don't think it's a difficult thing to do. Anyway, I've gone slightly off piste. I think New Year is a funny time, and I guess what this momentary rant by Lizzie Bean is just an invitation for you all to take the gas off the expectation that you need to be anything more than you are, and give life a go as you are. You know, I went high roping yesterday at a place in Gloucester, and I was doing the hike. It was utterly terrifying. I had a panic attack on one of the things until one of my children was like, "Mum, breathe, you bell end." I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's top life skill." And as I was I got round and I felt amazing yesterday. I had a real overwhelming sense of achievement, of peace. I'm not saying you have to do this, by the way, to get here, but like one achievement. And I later on was talking to somebody in the pub and they were like, "Oh gosh, you're amazing. You do all these things." Whereas when I get frightened, I just don't do them. And that is it. You know, we're so afraid. We're so afraid. So I'm going to take 2025 for me is another day tomorrow. It's no big shakes. It's no big nothing. But I am going to take into next year a new phrase. And it's funnily one of the things I said to this little boy I was sat next to in the pub as well. He, whenever he does maths, he goes quiet and he stops trying really hard because he's really frightened of getting it wrong. And you know, that's a big, you know, children do that, you know, they're so afraid of failure that they stop trying. And I identify with that. I know how that feels. And I looked at him and I said, you know, maybe this year we're going to have faith over fear. And I don't mean faith in anything other than who we are. And faith in those people that say that they love us and show it, you know, their behaviour shows it, you know, they're not just saying the words, but their behaviour, their intention to be a supporter in your life, that we start tuning into their frequency and we have faith that when they say I believe you, when they say I've got you, when they say I'm with you, we trust it. So there's my party political broadcast done. Done 32 minutes. I don't think it was very funny, but hey, a musician once said to me, "Lizzie, it's not about just being funny, it's about all of the feels." And it is, it's about all of the feels. So let's make 2025 a year that's faith over fear, that's full of courage and compassion. It's full of saying what you need, and it's full of finding the people that want you to win. That's where I head every day. And tomorrow, I want to invite you to come too. Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you to everybody who loves and wills this being on. Doesn't go unnoticed. My cheerleaders, I bloody love you. My family, they're pretty awesome. To my amazing Molly, who isn't here, who probably listens to this podcast and go, "God, Lizzie, you're an emotional wombat." She's not wrong. But thank you to all those people this year who've picked me up and dusted me down. To all those people that have looked me in the eye and said, "I've got you." To the one person that said, "You can trust me." I can't tell you the difference that made in my life this year. Those little moments that we take so for granted sometimes land in exactly the right place in people's hearts. Words are powerful, use them carefully. Let's help each other home. Let's help each other home. Oh, there's a lot going on in the Beanology world. I've got 3 retreats. I have a book published. I have a website. I speak. I run workshops. I'm one-to-one mentor. I work with teenagers, children, families, grown-ups, professionals, just people who want to believe in the light with which they were born, because I believe it's possible. So get in touch and let's make the world a brighter place for us all to live in. It's a goodbye from me, and it's a goodbye from Jasper and Kevin, and if Molly was here, her too. Happy New Year to you all. May it be wrapped in hope and light and warmth. All my love. Bye.